All right, I'm back to talk about more important works of literature, and right now I want to talk about My Antonia. This is one that my Scholarable kids need to have a better grip on, so I want to go ahead and talk about it. And the way this goes, the My Antonia, some novels are loud, some novels are dramatic, and some are just, full of twists. And My Antonia is none of those. And instead it tells a quieter story. It's about memory and endurance, and it's about the kind of strength that, well, it just doesn't ask to be noticed. And somehow that makes it one of the most powerful novels in American literature. It's important. It's an important part of the canon that we concentrate on as important pieces of American literature. So let's talk about. Well, first, it's My Antonia and not My Antonia. But My Antonia is set in the late 19th century in Nebraska, on the American frontier. But this is not a, the romantic Wild West of movies and dime store novels and stuff. This is more about harsh winters and endless fields and isolation. And then we also have immigrant families that are just trying to survive. The land is beautiful, but it's also very unforgiving. Now, Willa Cather, the author, she grew up in this world, and she writes it from memory, not nostalgia. Now, the story is told through Jim Burton, and he moves to Nebraska as a young boy because after losing his parents. There, he meets Antonia Shimerda, who is a bohemian immigrant girl whose life will become the emotional center of the novel. Antonia is hardworking, she's joyful and resilient, and she's deeply tied to the land. And she faces poverty and loss and social judgment, but she endures. Jim, on the other hand, becomes educated, successful, and eventually leaves. And the novel isn't really about what happens to them, it's about what they represent. Now, Antonia comes to symbolize the pioneer spirit, but not in a heroic or romanticized way. Her life is hard. As she loses her father, she continues to work the fields, and she is judged harshly for her choices. But she continues. Willa Cather doesn't portray her as tragic. Instead, she portrays her as rooted. And Antonia survives not because life is kind, but because she adapts and she works and she also just loves deeply. In many ways, she represents the soul of the American frontier itself. Now, one of the most important things about My Antonia is that it is told through memory. Jim is an adult and he's looking back, and that matters because memory softens things. It selects what to keep and it reshapes the past into meaning. And the novel isn't asking what happened, it's actually asking what stays with us. The prairie, the people, the feeling of belonging to a place before that place changes. Now, at its core, My Antonia is about endurance. Not success, not wealth, not fame. It's about endurance. It honors immigrants who built lives from nothing, women whose labor went unnoticed, who stayed when others left. And it suggests that true strength isn't ambition, it's persistence, and that the people who shape the world often don't get remembered for it. Now, I often come to these points and I need to ask, why it still matters, and why My Antonia still matters is the novel still resonates because it speaks to things we rarely slow down enough to think about. Where we come from, what we leave behind, who shaped us, what home really means. And in a world obsessed with speed and success, My Antonia reminds us that a meaningful life can be quiet and grounded and deeply human. My Antonia isn't a story about conquest, it's a story about connection, about land and memory and the people who endure long after the spotlight moves on. And in the end, Jim realizes something simple, but it's rather profound. And that is, some people don't just live in history, they become part of the land itself.